What's up guys, Syiler here, and we are back with some World of Warcraft content, and this time an Enhancement PvE guide for patch 6.1. Now, I never really had any intentions of doing this guide, but I did make a promise that I would, and here it is. As you may or may not know, I'm not playing too much WoW of recent, so my motivation for the game is kind of lacking. So this guide won't be quite as in-depth as my previous one in Mr. Pandaria, but it still should cover all the information you need to play PvE Enhancement Shaman. I still do raid to a semi-high level. I wouldn't really class it as high, but it's decent enough. And I still do main enhancement as well, so my knowledge on the class is still up there. So first of all, we're going to discuss our stat priority. And first of all, agility is our top stat at the moment, followed by haste, mastery, multi-strike, versatility, and then finally crit. Agility is straightforward. It basically increases our damage overall. Usually the better stat at the start of an expansion because it makes the other stats scale better. So the more agility we get, the more worthwhile haste, mastery, crit, all those other stats are. And it gives us some crit as well on the side, so it's not too bad of a stat. Next up is haste, and haste is the god secondary stat of the expansion. That's because mainly our flurry passive was changed, and it now reduces the cooldown and global cooldown of your Storm Strike, Lava Lash, Shocks, Unleashed Elements, and Fire Nova. So we kind of got the retribution treatment where haste basically gives us more abilities to press, and as Enhance is very spammy, it's great for us. Not only that, but we also got a new passive Lightning Strikes, which gives us 5% more haste from all resources, or all sources. And then finally we've got Grace of Air as well, which gives us 5% haste. So we get a lot of haste, like bonus haste, just by focusing haste as a main stat. Our aim is to have around 50% haste, but keep in mind that you want to kind of balance out your other stats as well, because the more haste we get, the more worthwhile mastery is, and the more worthwhile multi-strike is, and the more worthwhile crit is. So don't just kind of tunnel vision haste, but keep in mind the other stats as well, because the difference between them isn't that much. And as I said, the more haste we get, the better the other stats are. They increase in value, basically. Next up is Mastery. Once again, pretty straightforward. It increases our Fire, Frost, Nature damage by whatever percent of Mastery we have. And pretty much all our spells are, Fire, Frost, or Nature. So it gives us a flat damage increase there as well. Next up is Multi-Strike, a new stat added in Warlord's Draenor. Grants 2 X% chances to deliver extra autos and or heals for 30% of the normal value. So you basically have a chance to proc extra damage. And because Enhance attacks fairly often, and we see a high proc rate on that. So that's why it's our third best stat, or third best secondary stat. Next up is Versatility. This stat on paper seems like it should be really good, and when I first seen it I was like, wow, this is great, increases damage and healing done, we're a hybrid class, that's great, and reduces the damage we're taking. In raids you take a lot of passive damage, it's going to be an awesome stat. The downside to Versatility is you need so much of it to make an impact that it just isn't worthwhile. Like it, essentially I guess you could say it scales really badly. You need so much point by point to get a percent that it's just crap. So if you gained more of a percent for having, less versatility, it'd be good. But because of how it is right now, it just isn't. So it's a stat that you want to try and avoid as much as possible. And then finally, crit. Crit is usually the underdog stat at the start of an expansion, just because we can't get enough crit for it to matter. And we don't have enough of the other stats for it to matter either, because it's better to do more flat damage than do double damage every, 1 in 10 hits, that kind of thing. So crit will get better as we go on, but right now, because of how low the other stats are and how much crit we can get, it just isn't worthwhile. So there we go, that is a look at our stat priority. And as I said, Enhance is weird in the sense that all of the stats are good to us in some way, shape or form. It's not like, oh crit, that's an awful stat. It's still okay, you just want to try and avoid it for now. So if you get a piece that's an eye level increase, and they're both unsocket to pieces or something like that, but one has crit on and the other one has mastery, then think about them in terms of the agility you're gaining and stuff like that. Chances are the item level increase piece is going to be an upgrade, even if it doesn't have the perfect stats. So next up, we're going to take a look at talents. First of all, our level 15 tier hasn't really changed. Once again, Astral Shift is pretty much your go-to PvE cooldown, gives you that guaranteed 40% less damage when you need it, and there's quite a lot of fights where it's like, oh crap, I'm about to die, pop that, boom, you live. Nature's Guardian is better if you're kind of new to Enhance and you don't want to have to like manage an extra defensive. It's passive, it'll proc when you get low and it'll save you in some situations. It also isn't too bad if you're going to be taking kind of consistent damage, like, you know, in every sort of 30 seconds you're going to be taking a huge spike of damage. Then Nature's Guardian isn't too bad, but overall Astral Shift's better. And then finally we've got Stone Bulwark Totem, slightly better version of Nature's Guardian. It kind of gives you that sort of more frequent damage reduction, so isn't quite as on demand as Astral Shift, but if you're taking consistent damage through the fight, then Stone Bulwark isn't too bad for reducing your overall damage taken. Next up we have our level 30 tier, and once again this is kind of like a CC tier, it hasn't really changed. Frozen Power isn't as good anymore because we use Frost Shock in our general rotation. There's times where you'll Frost Shock an ad, and it'll be rooted and it'll turn around and slap someone else and kill them. So you have to be very, you have to be thinking about when you're using Frost Shock with Frozen Power, because you can kill people very, very easily with this. Especially in Foundry, there's a lot of ads. It's very easy to accidentally root one and kill someone. So Frozen Power isn't that great. It's good on fights where you need to single out one ad from the rest. Apart from that, you're not really going to use it too often. Earth Grab is essentially a AoE Frozen Power, except it's, you know, you don't have to use a damaging spell to trigger it, you just use your Earthbind totem, drop that, it'll root them all in place, and it'll also slow them afterwards. So it's great for, you know, kiting mobs, or kind of keeping them away from other people, or whatever you need to do. Pretty much your go-to kind of talent for that, basically. You're going to see this used more often than the other two. And then finally we've got Windwalk Totem. This is kind of like an anti-CC. If your raid is being sort of AoE slowed, you can drop Windwalk Totem and help them move it around. For example, we use this on... I can never remember this guy's name. Korag. We used it on him. So he's the guy that you'd want to use that on because he drops that Frozen Orb, slows the ranged. You can pop your Windwalk Totem in the range to just help them get out of it a little bit faster. So any fight like that, Windwalk is going to be good. 45 tier, I'm not even going to talk about these talents. This tier is such garbage. This should become like a passive, it shouldn't even be a talent, and they should rework this tier completely because it's useless. Totemic Projection you're going to use 99.999% of the time. I don't think I've ever switched to the other talents. Totemic Projection is pretty good though. Allows you to basically remove your totems, helps you keep your Fire Nova in place, or if you're about to outrange your Fire Elemental, you can move it back into position. So yeah, good talent overall, and it doesn't use a GCD either. So it's great for the start of a pull. You'll put down your Searing Totem before you pull, and you'll just move it towards the boss when you're in range. Get a little bit of an extra uptime on your Searing Totem. Next up we have the level 60 tier. This is our sort of DPS cooldown tier. We have Elemental Mastery. This is going to be your go-to kind of single target cooldown. It's very bursty, it works very well with Primal Elementalist and Storm Elemental Totem, and also Ascendants. Great, especially if you're going to lust on the pull as well. You get such a big burst of haste, which, as I mentioned before, scales off all your abilities now. So haste is very, very nice, and this just helps our kit great. Ancestral Swiftness is better for sustained damage, but at the moment we don't do enough sustained damage because we don't have enough haste and mastery. So most of the time Ancestral Swiftness isn't that great. We rely a lot more on our burst cooldowns right now. It might change a bit later on, and you might see Ancestral Swiftness picked up a lot more. But as of right now, EM is definitely a lot better. And then finally, Echo of Elements changed for the third time again. It did something different in MOP. It was a duplicate on the spells. It had like a chance to proc a duplicate of the spell. In WoD, it got changed to be like a proc where you could press like Storm Strike again or Fire Nova again or whatever, and it would be RNG. And then they changed it again so it gives your abilities charges. So my Storm Strike has 2 charges, my Lava Lash has 2 charges, and my Fire Nova has 2 charges. In general, on single target, this is kind of poop. The main reason for that is the charges don't have their independent cooldowns. So for example, if I was to press Storm Strike twice, you'll see my first charge of Storm Strike comes up the normal time it should. Once the first charges come back, the second charge begins counting down. If they were on their own independent cooldowns and you pressed, Storm Strike once, Storm Strike twice, and then Storm Strike 1 comes up and then Storm Strike 2 comes up straight after it, it would be very, very good. But the way it works right now, it isn't too great. It's still nice on AoE fights, especially if there's more burst AoE. It allows us to set up our AoE very quick. Put a Fire Nova up, you double Lava Lash, and then you can double Fire Nova, and you're going to get a big burst of AoE damage because you've just spread your Flame Shock to 6 targets instantly, and then you get to double Fire Nova off those as well. So it's still nice for AoE. Isn't that great for single target. I'd still go for EM or Ancestral Swiftness. The only thing that makes this talent semi-viable on single target is the fact that our improved Flame Shock gives us a proc of Lava Lash randomly, and every once in a while your Lava Lash will be off cooldown when it procs, so you've essentially wasted that proc. But with this talent, you get that backup charge, so you don't actually waste the procs as much. So it gains a little bit of DPS there by not wasting the Lava Lash procs. But outside of that, it's pretty bad, and I'd recommend the other 2 talents for single target. But once again, it's still good for AoE, so if you're on an AoE/cleave fight, then I'd look to pick up Echo. Level 75 tier, this is our utility tier. They've recently buffed Ancestral Guidance. It's now an effective healing cooldown. Still isn't that great, but it's a lot more useful than it was in the past. Conductivity and Russian Streams are pretty garbage, so I wouldn't really bother with those. AG is going to be your go-to cooldown. I'd try and use AG on AoE sort of segments where your raid's going to take a lot of AoE damage and there's a lot of adds out. You can pop AG, you can throw down some Fire Novas because you're going to be doing a lot of damage, and you can get a substantial amount of healing from that. Level 90 tier, we have Unleashed Fury, Primal Elementalist, and Ellie Blast. Unleashed Fury isn't too bad on cleave fights. We get the 5% multi-strike. It sees some situational use on AoE. Isn't that great though. Most of the time you're going to be using Primal Elementalist. This is great for single target burst. Buffs your Fire Elemental and your Earth Elemental. Mainly your Fire Elemental though. Gives you a hell of a lot of damage at the start of a fight or during Lust. So it's great. But there are some situational times where you would use Unleashed Fury. For example, I used to use it on Tectus and things like that. So, it basically just depends on if you ever need consistent AoE damage or that kind of burst single target every once in a while. And then Ellie Blast isn't that great. The fact that it can be a random proc of either Mastery, Crit, Multi-Strike or Agility, you can't guarantee what you're going to get. And it also takes up the cast time or the Maelstrom procs for a Lightning Bolt. It just isn't that great. It adds too much into the rotation that we don't need, because we're very spammy as it is, with the haste reducing our cooldowns and getting a lot of Maelstrom procs and things like that. We don't really need an extra button in our rotation, and it doesn't do that much more damage than Lightning Bolt, so it doesn't really do that much. So Ellie Blast you're really not really going to use in PvE. And then finally our level 100 tier, Elemental Fusion, get garbage. Complete garbage right now. You're never really going to use this talent. Storm Elemental recently got buffed in 6.4. It's actually pretty strong now. It does damage kind of on par with the Fire Elemental even during Primal Elementalist. So it's great for single target damage. Really helps keep our single target sustained damage up, because you'll burst in the beginning of the fight and then you'll put down Storm Ele and you'll continue that burst. And then finally Liquid Magma is great on kind of cleave fights or short burst. So say for example there's a fight that only lasts a minute, it's not really going to happen, but there's like a boss that needs to die within the first minute or something like that. You'd use Liquid Magma because that's going to give you more damage in the minute than you'd get from Storm Elemental, because you're going to put down your Fire Elemental, then you can Liquid Magma, while with Storm Elemental you need to wait for post minute 1 before you can put it down. So Liquid Magma is great on cleave, AoE, and kind of burst single target. And that's it for talents. In terms of glyphs, isn't really too much to talk about here. Glyph of Lava spread is great for sort of AoE fights. It gives us a higher range on our Lava Lash spread, so that's great. The Shamanistic Rage isn't too bad of a glyph either. It reduces it increases the cooldown of Sham Rage, but also increases the damage reduction. So there could be fights where you don't use Ancestral Shift and you use Shift and you use the Shaman Rage Glyph instead. The Feral Spirit Glyph isn't worth using, the one that reduces the cooldown of Feral Spirits, especially when we get our 2-piece, because we're going to be reducing the cooldown anyway with Storm Strike, and you also reduce the duration of your Feral Spirits with the Glyph as well, so it just isn't worthwhile. Once you get your 2-piece, you're going to have high uptime on your Feral Spirits anyway. So that is a look at Glyphs. There isn't a huge amount really to talk about in terms of Glyphs for WoD. Most fights you're going to be using either Glyph of Lightning Shield, Lava Spread, Fire Nova, Chain Lightning, maybe Cap Totem, like you don't really change much between those. Now we're on to rotation. So first of all, I guess we'll talk about the single target rotation. At the start of a fight, let me change out my talents real quick, because we're not going to be using Echo on single target. Hello? Okay, well, apparently we're using Echo on single target. Whatever. So, you'd open a fight. Say the countdown's going down, you got 10 seconds. On second 5, you want to use Spirit Walk. Second 4, you want to put down your Searing Totem. Second 3, Unleashed Elements. And then 2, 1, you want to be running in, and then you're going to pre-pot on 1, just before you reach the boss. And then from there, you've already got your Unleashed Fury buff active. It lasts for a very, very long time. You've got the movement speed increased from Unleashed Elements, which is great. And the reason you use it at 3 seconds is because the move speed boost is 3 seconds as well. So you get in kind of the max uptime of everything. And you've also reduced the cooldown of your Unleashed Elements by 3 seconds before the fight begins. So it's very very beneficial to do that. So we're at 3 seconds, we're running in. Just before you get to the boss, you've pre-potted. You've got a choice. You can either whack up your Flame Shock before you get into melee range, or you can put up Feral Spirits, depending on if you're going to be lusting on the pull, and if you want to use extra GCD early on. Once you're in melee range, we've just lusted, for example, you're going to be popping your Fire Elemental, you're going to be using Elemental Mastery if it's single target, you're going to Storm Strike once, and then you're going to Ascendance to get the Storm Strike again. Then you're going to Lava Lash, and then your Unleashed Element should be back off cooldown again, you're going to press that. And then if you haven't already got Flame Shock up, that's when you'd fit it into the rotation. It isn't that high of a priority, especially on the pull, because your other spells are just going to out-damage it with your Part and Lust active. So get Flame Shock up a little bit later on. If you haven't put Wolves out, this would be the point to put Wolves out, just before you use Unleash Elements again. So that gives you a bit of an idea. So we're gonna do it in kind of one swoop, so you can see what it looks like. So 3, 2, so we pop that, running in, and normally I'd have obviously Unleashed Elements, and I'd have Storm Elemental as well, but for some reason it won't let me change my Glyphs on my talents. So as you've seen there, we got the extra proc on our Lava Lash, and the charge didn't actually go to waste, so that's great. Always use Lightning Bolt at 5 stacks of Maelstrom, because that's going to be our highest damage output. And then after that, our priority goes, let me just get this guy to come back. So once your burst is out of the way, our priority is Lightning Bolt at 5 stacks of Maelstrom, and then Storm Strike, Lava Lash, Unleashed Elements, and Flame Shock as long as it's empowered. Obviously you want to be keeping your Searing Totem or Fire Totem up 100% of the time. Then 2 or more stacks of Maelstrom hard cast Lightning Bolt. Then if you've got 1 or less stack, you cast Frost Shock. And then if you've got 0 stacks and you've got nothing else to press, then you can hard cast a Lightning Bolt. Never really hard cast if you've got Ascendance active though, because you waste the Armor Pen from Ascendance. And yeah, that's a general sort of look at the single target rotation. In terms of AoE, the AoE rotation depends on how many adds there are, but for example, if there's 4 or more, you want to be ensuring you spread your Flame Shocks first. You want to be using Unleashed Elements on your Fire Nova, and you want to prioritize Fire Nova pretty high. I'd prioritize Fire Nova over Storm Strike and Lava Lash when you've got all the Flame Shocks out. Just prioritize Lava Lash a bit higher when you need to respread your Flame Shocks, because if you don't have your Flame Shock spread, the Fire Nova won't be really doing that much damage. So if you have one Flame Shock up, prioritize the Lava Lash first, and then Fire Nova after that. If there's 3 or more targets as well, you'd be using the Glyph of Chain Lightning, and you'd be using Chain Lightning at 5 Maelstrom stacks as well. So that gives you a bit of an idea for the AoE rotation. In terms of cleave, 2 to 3 targets, your priority needs to be roughly the same as the single target, except you want to fit in a Fire Nova just above the 2 to 3 Maelstrom stack hardcast, because it'll be doing roughly the same damage as that. So fit it in about there, and then after that you'd hardcast Lightning Bolt. And Frost Shock is garbage, so that should be your lowest priority pretty much always. So yeah, that's a look at the single target and the AoE rotation, and a bit of a look at the burst as well. If you have any questions, it can be, I guess, a little bit hard to show. I'll also have it typed out as a priority list in the description, so you can see it and then kind of look at that and then look at what I'm doing and get a better idea of the priority. But that is Enhance in a nutshell. We're pretty similar to how we were in MOP, very burst orientated right now. We don't quite do as much burst. We have pretty good AoE damage now, which we didn't have in MOP, and we're still very kind of spammy. We're still very fast pace, and there's pretty much always something to do with Enhance, which is one of the reasons I like it so much. So yeah. So thanks for watching, guys. Look out for more videos coming soon. See ya.